Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a fantasy critic podcast for all the fantasy critic enthusiasts out there who just can't get enough talking about fantasy critic. I am one of your co-hosts, John, aka John32, and I'm joined, by as always, by my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how are you today?
I'm doing okay, John. My throat's a little scratchy. I'm hoping that it doesn't come through too much on the mic, but apologies in advance if I sound a little crackly. But otherwise, doing okay. Doing okay. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It's busy. It's a busy time of year. Both the work year and the gaming year are wrapping up, and that means fantasy critic end year is on the horizon for us. Um, And, today is episode 14 for us. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different for all those listeners out there. It struck us when we started this podcast just under a year ago that, we really didn't introduce ourselves
We
that
really didn't,
great.
did we?
We just assumed, we just got right into it. I think we were, when we talked about Hype Factor, really like jazz to talk fantasy critic and really do something that was hopefully of service to people that are interested in fantasy critic. And we really didn't talk about us and our gaming journeys and how we ended up in this spot where we're making a podcast together. So you know this time around, I think, Marcus, there's not going to be your natural topic of the month. I think the topic of the month is going to be us. What
It's
do you say
us.
to that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm interested. I'm looking forward to it because I think that I'm going to learn something from you because we've been doing this for a while, but I don't know all of your gaming kind of backstory. So bits and pieces here and there, but I think I'm interested to learn a little bit more. So
All right. Well, let's unpack that together. Let's see how it goes.
Topic of the month.
I think where we should start, Marcus, is maybe talk a little bit about our own gaming journeys and what that's represented to us through our lives or however long you've been gaming. I think that's an interesting place to start, and then we'll kind of get into it of how it got us to this point of doing a fantasy critic podcast together. Do you want to start? Do you want to kick us off?
sure, I can do that. Yeah, like I think that my earliest gaming memories are kind of, I guess, where I started with the hobby. I'm a little bit older than you, John, so I don't.
Mm.
I remember first kind of encountering games in the arcades, and it wasn't really. I guess it wasn't an arcade per se. It was like arcade machines in hockey arenas because I played as a good Canadian boy that I am. I played hockey as a youngster, and so used to we would afterwards or before our games or practices there would always be arcade machines, and I remember games like Double Dragon or Wonder
Mm.
Boy, some of those shmups like I think it was 1942, 1943,
Yeah.
something like that.
1942. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I remember, or Arkanoid, love the Brick Breaker, Space Invaders. I remember Space Invaders. So I feel like those are my earliest experience. It wasn't, and maybe like I remember my neighbor across the street had a Commodore 64 as well, and we would go over to his house,
Wow.
play Frogger and loading those floppy disks into the and typing the commands to get the game to load, and yeah, so those are definitely my earliest memories. We never had anything at home until my parents bought us an NES, a Nintendo, for Christmas one year. And I do
Yeah.
remember the first two games that we got were The Legend of Zelda, Gold cartridge, and Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest series. So that kind of started
Mhm.
my love of like that RPG genre. I played those games. I played the heck out of those games, um, and built up my collection at that point. I have just one younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. So I remember he would get. He really loved RPGs. I remember he would always buy
Oh,
all the.
so you were the older brother in this scenario.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
and
that's an
I
important piece of
always
mind. So,
yes I always
yeah.
gravitated more towards sports games, big hockey,
Mm.
baseball, golf. I loved golf games. Not so much football at that point, although I did, like the Madden series, and I remember what was it, Joe Montana football on the Sega Genesis as well.
Hmm.
So, anyways, and I liked licensed games as well, like those Disney kind of classics. Like I thought it was so cool as a kid to be able to see things that we saw in either like TV shows or movies or whatever, and being able to play as those characters, right? So I remember like I had after the NES, I got a Sega Genesis, so I had Aladdin and Lion King, and and it was like the graphics on those. It was just mind blowing to me as a I would have been what 12 years old, maybe 11, 12 years old. So yeah, and that was kind of
So you were a traitor that hated Nintendo from early
the
days.
Sega got me. They got me.
Sega
Sega
got you.
does. They were. I
Yeah,
was the demographic that they
and you're
were.
the guy.
I
Yeah,
was it.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're the
like
demo.
Nintendo was for
Yeah,
kids. Sega was cool. Um,
gotcha.
and yeah, that kind of. And then by that point I was in high school, and my gaming kind of dipped for sure. And by the time I went to university, I wasn't really playing games. Like people would download stuff on computers in residence, and we would play a little bit, but not really. Nobody had a console. Nobody,
Right.
we didn't play games really much at that point. And I remember just before I went to university is when the Nintendo 64 came out. And I remember renting it, but we didn't own one at that time. So I do
Hmm.
remember playing Mario 64, but it was that I was kind of growing out of games at that point. And then really I didn't play many games until um, finishing university. Um, I went to grad school as well, got my master's, and then until I really got my first job out of university is when I kind of started dipping my toe back in. I bought a PlayStation 2. And again, the first kind of games that
Right.
I bought were like a hockey game and a Madden. I think it was Madden at that point. It was probably like 2004, 2005 maybe. And and yeah, I dipped my toe in a little bit. Got some, picked up some RPGs but I didn't really like. It wasn't like the hobby that it is now for me. And then Guitar Hero came. That was a really big one for us because like that was something we could play when we went over to friend's house and have some drinks before we went out to the bar, play some Guitar Hero. That was really fun, and that I spent a lot of hours playing Guitar Hero, and then
I did
subsequently
not know that.
Rock
I
Band.
did not know that about you. And
Yeah,
all the time that I knew you,
yeah.
I did not know Rock Band was part of your
Oh
lore.
yeah,
That's
love it.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was
Yeah,
pretty good.
the pre-bar gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good at the guitar and bass. Never really. Lindsay, my wife, would do the drums. She's really good at that, actually. Um,
Hmm.
but
I've never played a Rock Band, and I played Guitar Hero for the first time last year at an arcade
oh,
in Niagara
really?
Falls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I never had that moment. So it's fascinating to me, and it sounds awesome,
Yeah.
but I've never had that moment. Yeah.
And so that was PS2. We did pick up a Wii at the time. They were very popular. Um, and
Hmm.
so as I've said many times, that I'm not the biggest Nintendo person. We didn't have the Wii for Nintendo IP though. It was like Nintendo, like Mario and Zelda's. It had nothing to do with that. We had bought a version of Rock Rock Band. I think it was the Beatles version of Rock Band, which is fantastic. But it was really like those. It was all the gimmicky stuff that was associated with the Wii, like the Wii Fit and yeah, it was really just Wii Fit.
Wii
I think Wii
Sports, Wii
Sports. Thank you.
Sports,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Um, but besides that, I didn't play much. I remember playing No More Heroes. No More Heroes, the original one
Oh,
on
right.
on the
Yep.
Wii. Yeah,
Yep.
because I mean it made use of the motion kind of gameplay or the controllers. Anyways, it was all novel, but I was like getting frustrated because you'd see commercials for kind of like I don't know, quote unquote, maybe more real consoles, or maybe that's not the right
Hmm.
word, but like kind of like more graphical power. I mean, I remember seeing commercials for Uncharted, Uncharted 2 specifically, and Assassin's Creed. And I was like, and Final Fantasy 13, I believe, was coming out right around that time. I was like, I think I need to get a PS3. And that really, really was kind of the tipping point for me in terms of getting into gaming a little bit more seriously. Um, because there were so many good franchises. It wasn't like right at the beginning of the PS3 generation at that point. So we are probably a couple of years in. So there was a lot of games that I was able to kind of catch up on. Um, and kind of just kept going. I played basically every major game, major franchise on the PS3, and then just kind of transitioned to PS4, PS5, and have kind of more lately kind of been moving away from kind of major console stuff. I play a lot of indies today. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, mostly on Steam Deck, but even, if they happen to be available on console, I do enjoy still sitting on my couch to play games rather than handheld. But yeah, it's that's kind of the general kind of track through my gaming history.
So it was really around the PS3 generation, specifically on the PlayStation side, that kind of got you in,
Yep,
basically all in,
yep,
where you kind of just were locked into this is the hobby that you want to.
yeah.
I guess it's going to be part of you, right? It's always been there, but it's going to kind of be part of your kind of ongoing hobby
Well,
leisure
in
time.
in 2013, so it's been a while, 12 years now. My wife got a job in teaching at a Canadian school in Cairo, Egypt.
Mhm.
And when we moved there, we ended up staying there for 3 years. But when we moved there, we literally brought like a large duffel bag and a backpack, and that was it for each of us. That was all the stuff that we brought. But I brought my PS3,
Nice. Mm.
and I didn't have a job when we first moved there. So I had some time, and I got caught up on a lot of games. I remember sitting in just like the first apartment that we had there was probably like I don't know, it couldn't have been a 20-inch TV. It was probably smaller than a 20-inch, like, I don't know, 16-inch CRT.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
pictures of myself like pulling like the chair right up in front of the
Hmm.
TV and playing like Mass Effect on this. It was terrible. You could
Yeah.
barely see anything, but I was still playing, right? Um,
Yeah.
and and I remember the download speeds were so slow. I have to set something up like to download like overnight, right? A game, a full, potentially 24 hours. The downloads, internet speeds, at least at that time in Cairo, were really, really slow. It had unlimited internet, so I didn't have to worry about like the amount that I was downloading, but it was just really slow. So yeah, and then, right around the time that we came back, which would have been 2016, PS4 had been out for a bit, and I picked one up pretty soon thereafter. And yeah,
Yeah.
I've been kind of, a little bit more, um, I guess, current ever since.
Ever since, yeah. Well, I mean, that's not that unusual. There's some differences for sure, but like there's a lot of similarities, I think, in terms of where my journey's brought me. I, like you, like earliest memory, I was the younger brother
Okay,
of the youngest sibling, and my older brother for sure had an NES gifted at a Christmas. Probably I was probably three, I want to say, two or three. Like it's like earliest memory was
right,
Mario 1. Like
right,
just old school Mario running across the screen and learning how to play that, like muscle memory to play that game was probably one of the first things I learned,
yeah,
which I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is what it is. Like I remember whether it was Christmas or like Saturday mornings, like, which literally before everybody in the household is awake, like being the first one downstairs at like
yeah,
6 a.m. on a Saturday to turn it on silently and just playing it with like no volume for, an hour and a half before anybody wakes up. So, but that's not the only one. Like it's interesting when you talk about arcades. I mean, like when we would travel or go on vacations or different arcade opportunities, like yours were uh some interesting ones. Mine were more like Ninja Turtles and Simpsons and other arcade games that are maybe a little more contemporary, but these are also kind of like earliest memories. And
like Bart
then
Simpson versus the Space Mutants. Is it that one?
no,
Oh,
that's no, a little bit earlier than that.
yeah,
But like but like the NES for sure was like the most influential. Um, in terms of the games that I played, like obviously Mario 1, 2, 3 is like, still holds kind of special prominent place. But there's a lot of like other games, and I think this is the ones that I appreciate even more on the NES that, you know, were more obscure because the way it worked was not just my brother, but we had there were neighbors and others that were all older than me, right? I was the youngest, and these they had the ability, first of all, and the means to kind of go out to, like, they were at flea markets and they were at other shops, and they were like bringing back other types of games which weren't, Mega Man, Zelda, Mario, some of the big NES titles, even Ninja Gaiden, which we did play the hell out of Ninja Gaiden, but like beyond those, um, things that, like, to this day people probably never heard of, things like, well, that they haven't heard of, but may have never heard of, Jackal
Oh, I
and
love
Heavy
Jackal.
Barrel.
Oh yeah,
Well, Jackal is a classic, but,
yeah.
like, some of these games that, like, either Japan only had variations. A lot of the music that we have in our sequence breaks for between our segments are inspired by a lot of those, which are sound effects or musical interludes that hold a kind of special place in my mind, and wanted to bring them into this. So, like, that was a big piece. And then PC gaming. So you mentioned the floppy disk. I did partake also of the PC gaming. I haven't um I've been thinking about it a lot more recently, of like the early PC games beyond just Doom and Wolfenstein, but things like Rebel Assault, other types of point and click adventure games, things like Seventh Guest, where you know it, I was fortunate enough. My dad worked in IT, so
Okay.
which was not like his, like, he wasn't like an expert IT. He was just like more on the civil service side. But they would get these access to these, like, um, they would get basically like software. They could purchase software at kind of like market rate. Um, and so essentially, like, you'd come home every once in a while with, like, pick the games that you want to buy off this list. And it was pretty special to be able to try things that, like, again, like, probably more obscure, not necessarily as well known, and getting that exposure to both, like, big titles like things like Myst and other things, but also like smaller games that no one has heard of. Um, so that was like all the way through, and then it was really with the Super Nintendo. I remember this is a weird story. Um, I got the Super Nintendo, so it was the first console that was mine that I owned, um, as a gift as part of my first communion, Marcus. So
Okay. Yeah.
I know it's a little odd, as like it's not a Christmas gift. I think it's just the timing of the way it worked out, but it's so funny that like, in a weird way, ended up making that like a very memorable gift, because I like laugh about it to this day. And it was one of those things where they gave it to me and I didn't really expect it, and it was like, everybody needs to go home from this party now so that I can connect this thing in the other room and play this. Like, party's over, everybody go
Yeah.
home. You know what I mean? And it's interesting, it wasn't even Super Mario World, although that is like one of my all-time favorites. But I remember it was more, like, Super Mario World in my mind, in my 7-year-old mind, felt like a natural evolution from like the previous Marios. It was playing Star Fox that I
I
was
do
like, the
remember that.
original
Yep.
Star Fox, that I was just like,
Yep.
what is this? And just being like mesmerized by it. And then that just evolved, right? Like, again, those same neighbors had the same system. It was like NBA Jam and NHL '94.
Oh,
The sports
NBA
games were all
Jam. I
there.
forgot about that.
But that
Yes.
was,
Yes.
yeah, but it was like, and that was the period of time where you're really like renting games and trying out
Yep.
different things. You're not necessarily owning, and you only ever had like a handful. But it was that plus, like, some of the fighting games, which I was never good at, but like Mortal Kombat and Killer
Yep.
Instinct, that kind of like helped. I think we are being exposed to a lot of different things at that time, which was a really special moment. Like, you didn't even know how important it would be to your, like, appreciation of those genres, and it just kind of continued to grow. Um, I like most kids at that time, I don't think we had like a huge library. It was like you had the one game a year or two games a year, and you were lucky, and you enjoyed them, and you played the hell out of those games.
But the other thing too, we at least we used to do. I don't know if it was the same. Is your friends had
Yeah.
systems, and you would go to your friend's
Yes.
house to play different games than you had, right?
Different games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
We were fortunate enough to do some of that for sure.
Yeah.
Um, uh, or different consoles, even
Yes.
Segas and other things. So, and then by the time it's truthfully, by the time the N64 came out, which was again a console that I was fortunate to receive as a gift with a very limited library, this was the time where it felt as though at least some of the older people that I used to be able to share some of those experiences with, like, both my brother and others, they had started to move away from gaming completely. So this was much more just myself, maybe some friends from school, more niche. Um, uh, and obviously it's the same set of games though. But I do remember playing Super Mario 64 for the first time, playing Ocarina for the first time, and just that was really kind of again a transformative like step up in my mind of like what gaming could be. I had never really engaged with that. It's not to say I hadn't played like first person shooters or that kind of thing, but it was just very influential. And then that just led to the whole, again, you kind of mentioned this with the sports games, but the social aspect of playing GoldenEye and some of those
Mm.
you know, early N64 wrestling games where that's really how you're bonding with your friends at that age level. I think I was 13-ish at that time, so it was like perfect time for, we were playing all sorts of GoldenEye for hours when you had the chance. I unfortunately wasn't close to like we weren't like in the same neighborhood, so it was like it was fewer and far between opportunities, but it was one of those things. And then I think that's similarly where things started to somewhat peter out through high school, just because it's just the way those things go. I did get the original Xbox, and I actually have
Okay.
really like people never talk about the original Xbox, but like that was a moment that I think was, it's undervalued or under discussed as like a really like influential moment in gaming, because I remember playing Halo at Christmas and it was just like this is like it was like, really like almost like you're like what you would expect from a PC game in a console format and polish and everything that goes with it. So very special memory there. And just on your PlayStation rant, so like for the longest time, and this is going to come into play, but for the longest time, I was all in on Nintendo. I had wanted nothing to do with Sega. Like I would play Sega when I had the chance, but I was like, nah,
Right.
no, that's not it,
Yep.
right? PlayStation, same thing. I held that battle standard for Nintendo for a long time, and it wasn't so much that I was like in the know of like the big scandal and fallout between PlayStation and Nintendo. It was more that I didn't like the look of PlayStation, their games, their controllers, and as that like disdain kind of grew a little bit, I got the sense like their games were much more. I don't know why this bias grew in me, but like much more like either like turn-based RPG or like quick time events, and this kind of like grew in my mind, and I was like, nah, and that's why I was all in on Halo on Xbox, at least in those original. And then I also got the Xbox 360, but even with those libraries are even thinner um, than kind of what was before. It was just time and money and just the point in my life. You're entering high school and then university, and it was just like one of those things that there wasn't as much available resources for it. The one exception maybe being the Wii, similar to you, like
Oh
that
yeah.
kind of, Nintendo's been that constant. I didn't have a GameCube, but um, for the exact reasons I just mentioned, but I kind of switched over to Xbox. But the Wii was one of those things that was like, no, I need to see this thing in action. And actually, I was packing up like the old family home a couple years ago. My Wii collection was pretty extensive and like pretty solid given that it was motion controls. um I remember playing a lot of Tiger Woods like golf, like PGA
Yes.
golfing,
Yes.
and that was a lot of fun with the motion controls. So um probably didn't play it as much as I like to, but it was really after that point that there's this kind of um I would say gap in my gaming knowledge and catalog. Like even with the 360, I didn't play that many games. I had it modded and just never capitalized on that opportunity. I'm trying to think. So it just kind of slowed. It was always kind of there when like the opportunity arose, but gaming really slowed for me during that period. And it was really the entrance of the Switch that changed everything. So 2017, I
So
remember
you
like
skipped the Wii U.
really skipped the Wii U, and
Okay.
it was like just like again like trying to like build a career, looking to get married. I think got married in 2015. Um, the the opportunity though when the Switch came out was interesting because I remember it had been something that a lot of people were talking about this at the advent of Switch 2, like what the Switch 1 represented back then. And I remember when I first saw the ad, I was sending it to people I used to play like games with. I was like, this is what we wanted when
Right.
we were like 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or where you would, I've joked about this. You leave your NES or your Super or your SNES like on
Yeah.
all day. You know what I mean? Because you couldn't save, or you were at a point in the game where so you would essentially play for hours. You would be forced to go out to, shopping with your mom or whatever, or to a family event. And like, you're like, I gotta leave this thing here. You know what I mean? Like, besides the save states, like it just stops, even though we're gonna be gone with like dead time for hours. And the idea of being able to pick it up and go is just like one of those things that was just transformative in my mind, even at whatever age I was in 2017. And I remember like I've never been a big person that wanted to like invest a lot of money in gaming because to me, up until that point in my life, it was very much just a hobby.
Yep.
And so my wife actually got it for me as a gift, and it
Okay.
was like a very sweet gift. And she put a lot of effort into getting that thing, and like booting that up with Breath of the Wild, I was like, I'm back. You know what I mean? Like it was the right, it hit at the right moment in time where like things were much more settled and it had a little bit more time, and the Switch made it easy to do that. And then I had it almost reawakened like what I had forgotten about how much gaming represented in my life, right? And then like fast forward a couple years, just going through that Switch, there was an opportunity to potentially do something career wise in the gaming sphere, which never really panned out. But I remember I was trying to prepare. I was trying to prepare for an interview and do different things, and I was like, okay, I got to learn. I got to learn not just like what I love and my nostalgia for this thing, but I got to learn about the industry itself and like
Mm.
what's going on. And that immediately brought me to like the podcast world, and that's when everything changed more.
Yes.
Um, so that kind of brings us. That's been the last number of years, COVID aside, and everything that it represented in terms of the amount of time to play games. It fast forwarded that deep interest, not just in like the product, but now into the art form and now into the business side, which has changed everything. And I will say, now looking back, I did acquire in 2022, I want to say, I did get a PS5. So
Yes.
I did
Yes.
finally.
I know.
I had heard
Yes.
enough about The
Yeah.
Last of Us. I'm like, let me see what these PlayStation players are
Right.
talking about. And actually, a lot of people will crap on like the library of the PS5, but when you haven't played any PS4 games, the PS5 is great.
Sure.
Let me tell you. So I
Sure.
had PS Plus, still have PS Plus, and just like a sponge of at least the last two generations worth of anything I can pick up off of PlayStation and just learn. And now Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei are like pretty much every first party PlayStation game I've played has really probably changed the way I look at games in some way over the last couple of years. But certain games have just transformed it to a whole other level, and I have a very different perspective, um, a very different appreciation for what they've been able to produce. So yeah, and now I also have my PC where I can play my Xbox games and my Steam games. So it's like wherever the games are, I'm going to follow them. And the podcasts were naturally the next step, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long way of getting
Well,
here,
it's
but
funny that you bring up the podcast because that's definitely like that is. I think Dan mentioned it actually on our last episode as well. Is
yeah,
like the
yeah,
podcast is the gateway to really diving into this hobby.
yep.
Like I remember, I think I had found Podcast Beyond just leading up to going to Egypt, and that
Mm, hmm.
like I distinctly remember listening to episodes of Podcast Beyond on the flight to Cairo for the first time. And so like
Yep.
that persisted while I was in Cairo, probably found a few other shows. I remember, we have our friend Kyle Stevenson. I
Yep.
found um, Trophy Room. It was, we'd been back in Canada for maybe a year and a half. Like it was right when they first started. They're coming up on, geez,
Wow.
probably close to 10 years of doing the show. And so it was 2018, and the reason I remember is because they were doing right around the time that I was first found them. They were doing a contest for giving away a copy of God of War 2018.
Oh,
If
nice.
we're leaving them
Hmm.
a review, if you leave them a review, and I remember leaving them a review, and they read it on the show, and it was so cool. It was so cool, John. And fast forward later, I've gotten to know those guys, and obviously Kyle was on the show, and but yeah, that kind of that entry point through into the podcast world and these kind of more micro communities that we've kind of
Yeah.
found ourselves in and found, you know, friendship in. We wouldn't know each other had we not,
No. Yeah.
it's not like we're in the
Yeah.
same
I think
town or
about that all
anything.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. Because it was similar for me. Like when I said like I wanted to start learning about the industry, like obviously IGN was one of the first places to pop up. So I was listening to NBC, you know, at first it was to do learn about broader strokes of but like quickly it was just like I was just listening to Nintendo content. And at a certain point it was like, okay, I want to hear more Nintendo voices, right? Um and you quickly start looking, and I think that's how I found Nintendo Shack. And like that just spiraled.
Right.
Like you can see the natural connection of
All the like
Nintendo
all the
Shack to
threads, right?
PSVG to Carpool. Yeah,
Yes.
like that
Yeah.
just threads out, and eternally grateful for that too, right? For them to like be exactly what you said, a welcoming community. It's like, hey, do you want to learn more? And Donnie's always been like this. Donnie Reese from PSVG, see, like he's very engaging to his community. So it's like, okay, what is Discord? You
Yes.
know, let's go there. Engagement, but not just engagement for engagement's sake, like true engagement because there's like a shared passion for this stuff, and then it just spirals, right? And you can see those through lines, and like eternally grateful for that kind of through line because to your point, it ends up allowing for these friendships to grow, and you find each other. I'm part of a monthly book club where we're playing indies because like it you know what it is. It's like when we both told our stories, there's like people along the way, at least in my mind, that like help inspire you or bring you into gaming, right? Like I was fortunate to have family members, whether it's brother or parents or, my sister bought me my N64, like, or my wife buying me a Switch. Like these people are like encouraging or like supporting your habit. And that kind of transitions to where we are today, where it's like, it's your friends that you're making through these communities, and there's still people that are kind of guiding you in certain ways. And I just think that that's really profound because it changes, right? Like I'm inspired by you, like you mentioned your indie journey. I think one of the reasons I play as many indies as I do now is because of everything I've seen you and others like contribute. Like I don't know, I'm not scouting what's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, like now I am maybe for Fantasy Critic, but like
Yeah.
when I first started, it was really just like, oh, people say this is great, you need to try this, and I'd be like, what the hell is this game? But by
Yeah.
the end of it, you're just grateful that you had that experience. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think we really only have time for one more topic here, John. And this is, I think,
sure.
maybe it kind of wraps things up because I'm curious. We've kind of gotten to now, and I'm curious a little bit more about what are your favorite games now. Like, do you have some favorite games just
Hmm.
to play, not fantasy, just to play this year, last
Hmm.
couple of years? Like, where are you really gravitating towards?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. I mean, it's interesting that the last 3 years, like I will go out and try a lot of stuff, but the stuff that um sucks me in tends to like hold my attention. Um, so like just some pretty basic examples, but like played Breath of the Wild, played that game all the way through, loved it. When Tears of the Kingdom came out, I'm like, nah, they can't. There's no way they can like recapture those moments and recapture that passion and surpass it. And it's like, no, no, they did. So I mean, those some of those first party Nintendo games, not all of them, but some of them really still hold my attention and time and passion. I remember playing Fire Emblem Three Houses early in the Switch life, and I'm like, this is not, I'm not a big turn-based guy. I never really played like the um, tactics type game. And like it was a couple hours into this game, I'm like I am all in on this freaking game, like to
Yeah.
the point where I'm like protecting my characters. I'm feeling it when they're taking when they're dying on the bat. Like I'm like I didn't expect that. You know what I mean? Like that was like a new phenomenon, like outside of the type of like action adventure kind of. I would say maybe action RPG would be the extent of it. But this is like some new expansion of my horizons with some like tactics types game have been really like another constant. Um, Trying to think what have been some really special games I've stood out. Um, Odyssey Super Mario Odyssey to me was another one where it felt the way it felt playing Super Mario 64 in a way. So it, you know, seeing a quote unquote platformer be able to still capture the imagination all
Yep.
these years later was like a special moment. And I was like, yeah, that still does it. Um, More recently on the PlayStation side, similar experience where Ghost of Tsushima, I don't know, I don't 100% games. I rarely platinum games. Like I rarely have to be all in to platinum something, or to 100% something. And Ghost of Tsushima is one of those things where I wanted to do it all.
Yep.
And similarly this year, I was like, is Ghost of Yote really like? Was it just a one-off? Was it just a fluke? And Ghost of Yote was just more Ghost of Tsushima. And my whatever trigger it's doing in my brain, I'm all in for that gameplay style, the storyline, the sceneries, the character development. I'm all in for it. But I'd probably say that some of the other games more recently that have kind of held a special place for me is like um, on the indie side. Um, Playing Citizen Sleeper for the
Hmm.
first time. More so one than two. We haven't really talked about that, but um, two I found less stressful. Now I did restart it
Oh,
once
really?
because I
Hmm.
screwed up. I screwed up a little bit, and I was like, I'm missing some story beats here. So I restarted two and had to beat it. I beat it that way. Um, and but like I found myself like sweating through the first one,
Okay.
um, mostly because of the mechanics. Uh, and I did not think a game like that would capture my imagination the way that it did. And that's what I mean about like expanding horizons now as a kid or even like playing when we were in our 20s, like that was not
Never would have
going to be
touched that.
something that I would have entertained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
And it's a completely different moment now where the term gaming and the definition of what gaming is like completely changed. So Citizen Sleeper is one for sure that breaks a mold. Um, Shout out to the Backtrackers. That's the book club, gaming video game book club that I'm part of. That create some of that incentive to really like not just engage with these games but also like finish them.
Hmm.
I think sometimes it's also just wanting to complete them, but it's like such a rewarding exercise. The other one I'm thinking of, and I know you didn't really connect with this, was A Thousand Times Resist.
Right.
um, in just like a storytelling in a game where it's just so different than anything else. And I know these are more narrative driven games with maybe some light puzzling or some light game mechanics, but it just really changes. I don't know. It changed perspective on what gaming can be for me. Um, and I think I really appreciate that because there's lots of games I could talk about just playing and like plowing through. Like I played Donkey Kong Bonanza for the first time this year and beat it and loved it. I 100% of that game too, and um, it'll stick with me. But something like A Thousand Times Resist, which is made by an indie team out of Canada, really telling a really deep, um, passionate story about lots of different themes, is I think about what's going to resonate with me 5 years down the road. What am I going to be talking about with people that aren't familiar with gaming? And I've always like come to appreciate like when you talk to someone outside of our circles, like the normies as it were,
Yeah.
about the types of games that we're playing, and they're like what are you even talking about? And they still hold that kind of um stereotype of what gaming can be, and like being able to break that impression a little bit is still a really rewarding exercise. What about you? I know that you've been playing a lot of indies, but like what are you kind of like, what's captivating your attention these days?
Yeah, well, it's definitely of late, and I feel like even more recently, like I was I didn't mention it kind of in the earlier section, but I bought my first Xbox this gen. I have a Series X, and I was quite keen on kind of the changes that Xbox had been making, kind of that additions to this development of their Game Pass subscription model, and a lot of consumer friendly practices early in this generation.
Mhm.
And in the last year or so, I felt like a lot of the decisions that they were making was really pushing me away. And the most recent increase in their Game Pass subscription was just was the last straw for me, and it really turned me off. Um,
Mm.
and I've been somebody that's gravitated towards PlayStation IP just in general. I did like kind of the direction that Xbox was moving with a lot of the franchises that they were developing, the bigger kind of titles. Um, but I did kind of tend to still gravitate towards the first party PlayStation library,
Yeah.
like the God of Wars and the Spider-Mans and the Last of Us, and those types of the Uncharted's, and those are still games that I very much enjoy. But even PlayStation had been pushing that live service kind of like strategy that they had been kind of working towards, and that's not I've said many times on this show that I do not do multiplayer. I don't play
Hmm.
the Call of Duties of that's those types of games. That's just not my thing. And so I had even become maybe a little disillusioned with the direction PlayStation had been going of late, and then the Xbox. So it was like it was just like I felt like if I'm going to devote my time and energy, I would rather support these smaller developers. And plus, it's not just out of charity either. They are
Yeah.
making some of the most interesting games that I've played in the last few years. So like some of my favorites are the Citizen Sleeper. I actually prefer Citizen Sleeper 2 to 1. I found it actually a little more stressful than the first one.
Really?
I
What
did.
was I
Yeah.
doing? I was like,
Yeah.
I had so much resources. I don't know. I gotta go back and play it on hard.
But games like, which I guess is a first party game, but it feels more like an indie, is Pentiment. The hi-fi
Hmm.
rushes. Pentiment. Oh, Pentiment, John. Have you played this? It
It
is
is downloaded. I have
okay.
not played it.
You
It's been
should. You guys
downloaded
should
for a
do it for
while. Yeah.
backtrackers. That would be a great backtrackers game. But anyways, I loved Pentiment. Tunic is one of my favorite games in the last few years.
Yes.
Um,
Tunic, agreed. Up to
s-
100%. Canadian
so
made,
good.
and
Yeah.
just to me, that game is something that takes the nostalgia and the modern
Yes.
and jams it together in a beautiful way.
And not only is Tunic so fantastic because it's a cool game to play and explore and give that, but there is a level of depth in that game that is just not even apparent on the surface at all. Like some of the post game, post credits kind of stuff that you can do is just,
Hmm.
I love that stuff. I'm not smart
Yeah.
enough to do it myself, but I still kind of like played through it using like a walkthrough because I just wanted to be able to see it. What else? Games like Death's Door. I'm always a sucker for a good like 2D platformer. I love my Metroidvanias. So games like The Messenger and the Ori games, those are really high up on my all-time list. Hollow Knight I've talked about before. Still haven't really gotten back to Silk Song. Probably won't for a little while now that I don't have Game
Mhm.
Pass anymore, but we'll get there eventually. And yeah, like these are the types of experiences. And I think like the fact that we mentioned I mentioned at the end of every one of our shows that I do another podcast called Tiny Game Chronicles. That was more out of necessity that we chose to do that topic. We liked indie games, sure, but we wanted to be able to do a podcast that focused on games, but we didn't want to have to play games that took 20 hours to play and then podcast about it. It was more like
Yeah.
a logistical thing than anything else, a practical thing. But since we've been doing that show now for a little over a year, I feel like it's like I look up a. It's one of the first things I do when a game looks interesting. How long does it take me? 5 hours? Great.
Mhm.
That's excellent. 10 hours? Okay, that's pretty good still. 25 hours? Maybe. If it looks really good, maybe we'll get to that one eventually. But
Yeah.
it's those shorter experiences because I want to be able to try so many different things. And if I'm
Mm.
spending, I don't have enough time to be trying out that many 40 plus hour, 50-hour games, right? And so
Yeah.
my time is just, it's too precious. So in order to be able to get lots of different experiences, the games just have to be shorter. And if they're shorter, then I'm also supporting smaller developers, which I like the idea of. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's just really, especially this last year and a half has really kind of pushed into that direction. So I was looking back at like how many games I've even played on PlayStation this year, and it's not that many.
Two.
Yeah, like big ones, it's not
Yeah.
that many.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I like the two that they put out,
yeah, I
but
haven't played.
also.
Which ones are you talking about? Death Stranding? I haven't played
I'm
that.
just joking about Death Stranding 2 and
Yeah,
Ghost of Yotei.
yeah, I
I
haven't
love
played
them both,
either,
but
and I probably,
it's an interesting,
yeah, probably won't anytime
even with
soon.
the, yeah, and with the indies, I think, and maybe this is a pattern, like, I know what I like when it comes to first party. Like I'll play all of it because they're big and they're beautiful and they're fun, and I know what I like in those genres, and usually they can deliver against them. And I think, um, whether you're a Nintendo or Sony or Xbox, you're or other big AAA studios, you kind of like know the equation. We're gonna get GTA 6, and we're going to get the equation that like it really hits the right buttons and we're going to love it. But the indies are like you don't know what you're going to get, and I think that's part of where that journey has taken me. It's like i the part of the reason is like I don't know what the next thing is going to be. um I've had really positive things to say about Blueprints this year, not just from a fantasy critic perspective, but I beat that game, at least the initial
You
beating of
did
that
beat it.
game.
I wanted to ask you about this. Yeah, I knew you
Yeah,
had played it, but I
yeah.
didn't know that you beat
And
it.
that was enough. Like I've made my choice that I'm not going to go through all the stuff. I did look some videos and some other things afterwards because I know how long that game can be. Um, but I loved it.
Yep.
I loved it, and it's not a genre that is something that's familiar to me. Maybe like, and except for maybe like my ancient PC history with point and click adventures or some light puzzling, this was different, and it really struck a nerve. And I'm glad to see it get nominated for awards and all that stuff at the end of this year. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I could, in terms of what I'm playing, there isn't like it's eclectic almost intentionally
Yep.
at this point, and I don't mind that. It helps. It also helps with Fantasy Critic, just to be like aware, and I think maybe that's part of it is to tie it back to doing the podcast. One is also being inspired. One is because we wanted to talk about, this subject that we're so passionate about, we have fun with. But also we've talked about how Fantasy Critic has influenced, at least in some ways, what we choose to play. I know there's at least a couple games this year, Marcus, that you've even tried out because of its Fantasy Critic relevance, um, the narratives behind certain indie games, and yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Some of my
I
favorite
like
games of
where,
the year. Consume Me, The
yeah,
Altars. I wouldn't have played them
hmm
without Fantasy
yeah,
Critic.
yeah, and yeah. I kind of really like, if I'm looking back at everything, a lot of times we were looking at our history and our nostalgia with the kind of rose-colored glasses, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it. I love the memories that it created, but I also really like and love where we're at now. We're trying, the things that we're passionate about, and giving lots of different things a try, and celebrating those that really push those games forward. I think is a really nice place to be. You know,
Agreed.
rather than those that you know we talked about Kyle before, people that try and tear down those that are kind of trying to do some of that celebratory work. So
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah, no, it's nice to hear that. I learned a lot, I think, in hearing you talk about your
Same.
journey of
Yeah,
stuff that I
yeah.
didn't know about, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I look forward to Rock Band or Guitar Hero returning and us getting to play that together
Yeah,
at
it's been
some
a
point.
while.
Yeah.
I do regret having sold all of the that stuff because I wouldn't mind
Yes.
pulling it out.
I hear
Yeah,
yes, I hear that it's also kind of expensive to
I
reacquire
know,
now.
I
So
know, I know.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun.
It was fun. Yes.
Hopefully that gives everybody a little bit of perspective on where we're coming from when we're talking about some of these games and why Marcus doesn't like Nintendo. Just kidding. Just I'm just
We
messing with
didn't
you.
even really get into that, but we could maybe a future episode, John. We'll talk about why I
Yeah,
hate
yeah, we'll
Nintendo.
have to unpack it. When
Yeah,
we do our Nintendo episode,
that's right. Yeah,
we'll as them as a publisher.
yeah.
All right, let's talk about the news.
Let's get into the news.
Not too much to go through today. We're recording, I think, on the same time day as Xbox doing their partner direct thing. So we don't have those in our notes, but I think from everything we're seeing at a high level, it's all kind of 2026 facing. So look forward to hearing our thoughts in the episode coming out next month, where we will look ahead to 2026 and do a bit of a draft preview with our thoughts and inside tips. But for now, we'll start with the Sony State of Play that was Japan only, that came out earlier this month. there's a lot of games. I don't know. Some of them are probably more relevant than others. I've had a little bit of a list here. I didn't include everything, but let's start with Dragon Quest Remake. This is a game we had seen before. Looks cool, has a weird art style. I think probably 2026 is a safe bet, and also probably a safe bet for Fantasy Critic at some point. Dragon Quest tend to do pretty well.
They certainly have of late, right? The
Hmm.
Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, and then the one and two that
Hmm.
just came out, both performed quite well. I think what was well, we're probably going to get
I
into
think, yeah, I think it's
one and two.
85 if I'm not
85.
mistaken. Yeah,
I think that's right around where eight,
3 was, yeah,
three was.
yeah,
Yeah. So I suspect this is B1, and I think it's scheduled for early 2026. I don't know. We don't have a date written here on our notes, but I felt
yeah.
like it was an early ish.
I think you might be right. Yeah,
And so this is one that I'm kind of keen on. I've heard about. I
yeah.
I think I've maybe talked about this on the show before, but um, Dragon Quest Seven was one that I'd never played. It was kind of in that
Hmm.
phase where I wasn't really playing games, but I did play Dragon Quest 8 on the PS2. And I've always thought about going back to this one, but one of the big detractors, which is also in line with what I've talked about, the original game is like 110 hours long for the main story,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I guess they had done another remake for 3DS, I want to say, one of the handheld systems, where they stripped it back, but it was still like 70 or 80 hours. I've heard that this one is more in like that 40 to 50 hour range. So they've really
It's
compacted
perfect.
things, streamlined things, and that sounds really great. So, yeah, I'm keen to play it. I think it's probably a pretty good bet, especially if it's got an early date for 2026
Yeah.
fantasy
Yeah.
purposes. Yeah.
And I'll remind everybody this was Japan only, so some of this is going to be lost in translation, but
Yeah.
also like everything we saw here, I think was 2026. So there's very little, if anything, that's 2025 as we approach the end of the year. Next one on my list was Inconveni, One Store, Many Stories, with an April date. No idea how something like this was going to score, but I really liked it because
Okay.
having just traveled to Japan and really liked their convenience stores. Uh, I don't know. Something like this could be a little bit of a hidden gem. I don't know. Like before we give a fantasy critic recommendation, probably have to do a little bit more digging on this one, but it looked cool. I could see something like this being like one of those hidden games that everybody just loves some of these management sims, but a bit of an open question. One that might be worth talking about is Coffee Talk Tokyo, which I think did get a March date. I did look at the Coffee Talk scores, and they kind
They're
of are
kind of
in
high
the
70s.
70s-ish range.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I don't know what to do with this one. And that's good that we know this now, but
Might be
um,
based on our episode last week. Maybe this is one of those low bid games for Critics Royale, John.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
if we
Where you get it
basically
for a cheap dollar and try and get 9 points out of it or something.
something
Yeah,
like that, yeah.
yeah. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Also talked about or shown was Unfollow, which I think was like a horror type game. I can't remember which one this is with a early January game. But again, it's hard to kind of pull too much information about some of these games. Um, so again, when you don't know, it's best to avoid.
Yeah.
uh, Broken Lore Ascend with a summer date, just summer 2026. No official date. Another kind of cool looking game, but um, again, unsure how to mark this for next year. Probably going to be a lot more standard, let's say, safer picks than something that you're unsure of.
Yeah, so for so many of these games, John, I have very little to kind of offer. I don't think that most of them will be super fantasy critic relevant, at least not unless until if and until we see a little bit more from them.
Yeah. The other one here was Fatal Frame 2 remake with a March 12th date, and I think the Fatal Frame games are generally in the 70s.
Yep,
I think
I
so.
think so
Again,
too. Yep.
probably even though with the date and everything, probably one to avoid. And then Dynasty Warrior Origins, just with a blanket 2026. I've been tending to stay away from the Dynasty Warrior games. I think also Hyrule Warriors is proving that, although it's fluctuating around the 80 mark, it's holding on to stay in that 80 category. But again, probably not one you want to gamble on. Now, maybe some of the ones that are a little bit more interesting, at least to my eye. Nevergrave. So Marcus, I don't know if you saw Nevergrave. This has a, I believe, March. So
Yes.
March 5th or May 3rd date in 2026. It's a Metroidvania roguelike. Looks really cool. And this is the same publisher as Palworld. So
Oh, okay.
Nevergrave is one that I know I would like to do a little bit more digging on. I'm not going to try and predict what the score is going to be or anything like that, but it looks pretty awesome. And it kind of has a little bit of that heft behind it. So,
It did look
any
good.
thoughts on
That
that
was
one?
actually one of my personal highlights. I'm not sure where it will end up landing in terms of fantasy, but actually when I first
Yeah.
saw it, I was like, "Are they showing Constance again?" It looked a little like
Yeah, a
Constance.
little bit. Yeah.
It's that
Hmm.
hand drawn art style
Hmm.
Metroidvania. It was very bright. Um, it looked very cool. I know that it had been. It was like a, I don't know, the Japanese kind of witch Hollow Knight. Like it was very Hollow Knight
Exactly.
influenced. So um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Could be
looks cool.
something to look for.
Could be.
Yeah. I'll have to dig into that a little bit when we look ahead to 2026. This next game, Blaz Blue Entropy Effect X. Any awareness of Blaz Blue, Marcus?
I think they actually do okay. I don't know this
I
entropy of,
do.
yeah. So like low 80s kind of.
Exactly.
Is it
I'm
Blaz or Blaze
consistent.
Blue?
I have no idea. I've never heard of
I've
this game
always
or this
said
franchise
Blaze Blue.
before, but
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think they do okay. Um, yeah, I'd have to take a closer look at kind of the history of the franchise to kind of get, especially more the recent games.
Yeah, but for the fact that they are able to deliver,
Yeah,
I think this one is a 2D game. I don't know if it's like a platformer, but it looks interesting. It's just in its own right. But I was more taken on by the scores of the series that just seems to just like deliver
yeah,
over and over again. So one that we'll have to keep an eye on. Again, some of these games are kind of like going to be hidden, especially if they're only releasing in Japan. But they're getting scored over here too. So like they're ending up with open critic scores. So people should be paying attention. Um, I'm going to skip over a couple because I don't know what to make of them, but I will talk about Fate Trigger,
okay.
which is a Q1 release for 2026. Now, I think this looks cool, but it is also a hero shooter multiplayer game, Marcus, and you know what we
Okay.
do with those.
Yes.
I am not going to advise people to pick it up, but it looks pretty interesting as a replacement for things that are already
I
out
think
there.
my eyes
It's got a
must have
little bit
glazed
of
over at this part because I don't remember this at all.
yeah, it's like an anime. I think it's like a Chinese company that's put this together.
Okay.
It looks pretty smooth. It looks kind of interesting in terms of the art style because it's basically like Fortnite-ish in terms of just having a shooter with like anime characters in it, but it looks pretty cool. Um, but again, I wouldn't necessarily bank on this for fantasy critic purposes. Um, the one that I think everyone should bank on for next year is this next game, which is Marvel Tokon Fighting,
Agreed.
which is the Marvel fighting game. And it made a splash when they first showed it. It looked like it made another one here at this state of play. And I think this has a very high chance of being a breakout star and one that people may not put in their kind of like higher tier pick list for 2026. So something to keep an eye on.
Do we have a window or I'm fairly certain we don't have a date, but do we even have a window beyond 2026 for this game?
No,
Okay.
but I don't think so. Not that I've seen, but not that they disclose in this, but they're in a closed beta or there is a closed beta coming
Right.
up for this game. It tells me that
It's got to be
I think they're
soon, right?
close,
Yeah.
right? Unless there's some really major issues that they discover. Um,
You got
I'm
to believe
hoping
it's
it's close.
fairly safe for next year.
Yeah, so something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah.
And then the last game from the not game, DLC,
Hmm.
Elden Ring Night Ring DLC. December 5th, everybody. It's out there and it's available if you're listening. But I hate DLC now for Fantasy Critics, so I'm going to try to
That's right.
avoid
We
it.
avoid DLC on this show. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I mean, Night Rain itself didn't, I think, like overperform when it came to this. So I guess there's a chance it could hold up some points, but I'm just not. I'm not
I
buying it.
haven't actually. Do you remember where it ended up settling? Was it in the 70s?
I thought it was. I thought it
High
was either high
70s?
70s or low 80s.
Yeah. Seems like that.
Yeah, but for this DLC, I mean, we've been burned too many times this
Yes,
this year,
100%.
guys.
Yeah.
let's just avoid it.
Pick
Yeah,
up
it was right
Skate
on the
Story
mark,
instead.
right on the 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the Elden Ring Night Raiden was an 80. It landed right on an
Okay.
80. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a state of play. A couple other things we learned this month. We did see a more extensive trailer for Metroid Prime 4, Marcus. I don't know.
I
Have you
missed
looked at
it.
this? Have
I
you?
have not. No.
Ah, you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what the internet is saying about this
Okay.
trailer. People, people are not happy about this
Oh,
trailer. Yeah,
I haven't even heard
not
this
the
actually.
motorbike,
Okay.
not the motorbike anymore. The other NPCs
Hmm.
that people take offense to being in a Metroid game because it reduces the illusion of being alone on this planet. And there's one NPC in particular that is being called out for being annoying.
Okay.
People are very concerned about this.
Okay.
So just
So obviously, if you
more
have,
and more, there's like things working against you here in terms of Metroid Prime 4. Like,
yeah,
I'm not,
if you have
yeah,
Metroid Prime 4 and you have the ability to drop it, you're going down with the ship. You're not dropping Metroid
you
Prime
go
4
down with the ship.
at this point.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
do you think that some of the stuff that we're hearing, John, is kind of speaking to that zeitgeist, kind of the tone around the game may not be kind of where we thought it would be, or at least I thought it would be right at the beginning of the year when I picked it
I
as a
would like
lock.
to believe,
Yeah.
I would like to believe that critics that are going to be reviewing this game are going to do their best to tune out the noise
Yeah.
and play the game because the truth is with all of this stuff, whether it's the NPC talking to you or this motorbike in an open desert world, nobody actually knows
Hmm.
like how long this crap lasts, if it's the whole game long, if you have the ability to turn it off, if you have if there's actually more to these different areas than they're showing. Like they're choosing what to show for commercial reasons. So I think there's still a chance that critics are going to review this in a way that rewards it for what it's doing and not for all the noise around it. I think there may be some that are influenced that think um, they have to go in a specific direction because it's not being true to the Metroid spirit. But I'm still optimistic. I agree with you. I think we need to go down with that ship. I think it's probably still going to land in the mid 80s,
Yeah.
truthfully. Um, I don't think it drops below I don't think it gets to low 80s. I think it's probably going to be in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
we're gonna guess
Spoiler
that
for what I'm
score.
going to choose in
Yeah.
terms of that
Yeah.
score.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but it made the rounds. The next story from this past month, which is not really going to be fantasy critic related, although maybe it'll influence future considerations, is on Arc Raiders. So we're going to talk about the Arc Raider score. It's come down a little bit. It started super high. It was, I think, sitting around a 92 for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Eurogamer
It
review
was the
that
Euro,
really
the two out of
started to bring
five.
it
Yep.
down, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and that really reflected the discovery or the disclosure of AI assets being used in the game.
Mm.
And I just wanted to pause and talk about this a little bit because there was a lot of discourse about whether or not them using AI should influence the review score.
Mm.
So I don't know, Marcus, do you have any thoughts you wanted to share on this? I've got a couple, but maybe I'll have you kick us off. Like,
Well,
what do you think about that whole
I
narrative?
I
Because it will
think
affect other games in the future, and it will affect
yes,
Fantasy Critic in the future, right? So,
yes, and I think I want to maybe we'll put a pause on whether or not it should reflect review scores. I think we can talk about
yeah.
how much we think it will reflect
Mm.
review scores, and I think this we had this discussion a little bit with when Sean Capri was on the show about the price of games affecting review
Hmm.
scores. This is stuff that's kind of, I guess, the AI piece is more of the in-game experience, but unless you knew it was AI that helped develop the game in some way, shape, or form, you wouldn't know. Like as a player, you wouldn't know unless it somehow
Yeah.
comes out. It somehow they either tell you or it comes out through some leaked source of something, right? So it to me, I kind of view those things as very similarly. Is like it's a bit outside of what the individual player is actually experiencing, and you're kind of taking in something that's surrounding the game. it's not even dissimilar to people, whether you agree with it or not, people giving Hogwarts Legacy bad review scores because it's an IP associated with the creator, which they don't
Sure.
like, right? This is not
Yeah.
necessarily directly related to the game. And so I think that this will continue to happen, especially as
Hmm.
developers are pushing the limits, trying to, experiment with different ways to cut costs and, how upfront they are, what the public just determines is acceptable. Because I think like there
Yeah.
isn't this
A hundred
universal
percent.
thing of like, oh, all AI use is entirely off limits. Although for some reviewers or some people that might be the case, but I think a lot of people
Hmm.
kind of fall in a little bit more moderate. Well, in these certain circumstances, I don't have an issue with it, but in these other certain circumstances, it's
Yeah.
no good. And so, like,
The generative AI for like artistic assets or
yes,
voiceover. Yeah. All those pieces.
yeah. So I think like this is going to come up again. 100%,
Yeah.
this will come up again.
Yeah.
I've heard people on podcasts talk about, because Steam requires games that are on Steam to disclose whether or not AI was
Hmm.
used in the development. I don't know if that's the case on like PlayStation or probably not, right?
I don't think so. Never
Yeah.
heard of this.
And
Heard
so
of this
I've
anywhere else.
heard podcasts that I've listened to. They found out they won't play any game that has any AI. Like that's
Yeah, I've
their
heard that
line.
take too.
And
Yeah,
you know,
we'll see how long that
I'm not
lasts.
whether what my feelings are. And if we're talking from a fantasy critic perspective, your feelings, put those aside. It doesn't
No
matter what
matter.
you think. Like,
I
right?
know. Yeah,
You're trying to gauge what everybody else, what reviewers are going to think about this thing.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that this type of stuff will bother some reviewers. And will that
Yeah.
affect scores? Yes, potentially.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yes, I worry more about this than the NPC in Metroid Prime 4.
right.
I'm kind of like right there with you. The question of should probably not. In terms of like a reviewer reviewing a game, I don't think, you know, philosophically, I don't love the idea of generative AI either in terms of like taking away jobs or replacing our real artistic expression. Like that's, I think, a real concern. Do I think it's going to continue to proliferate because it is a path for them to do things cheaper? I think it will. Um, and like I've heard the take of like I'm not going to play anything with it. You probably already have. You
Mhm.
probably don't even know it.
Right.
And I'm and I'm like, once you're right, like once the general population deems this to be quote unquote okay, everybody's going to be doing it, and like I don't think people are just going to stop playing games altogether. So
But we're in
it's a
that
tough,
transition period right
yeah,
now. So like
yeah, and
people are
it's not
still
going to
trying
be
to figure it
easy.
out.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so look, should they use it when they're reviewing what the game is? Probably not, because truthfully, you probably should be just reviewing the game for what it is, not about how it's made. And that if that was the case, then we should also be considering like how many people were laid off by dev studios and publishing houses too, right? Like, and that's not necessarily done. Um, but I think it's a reality that it's going to come into play, like you said, right? It's going to be one of the things that affects the zeitgeist for a game, and I think looking at 2026, that this is going to have to be something we keep a close eye on when we're talking about games because it has the potential to sink. Now, they still scored really well. Like
Mhm.
Arc Raiders, like it's still sitting at I think it's 87,
It's one of
which
those
is
things
great
that's
for
tricky too, though. Like
you know.
again, just through that fantasy critic lens, how do you know, a month, 6 months before
Hmm.
you pick up a game, whether or not this is going to be an
Yeah,
issue for
whether
that
AI is
game?
going to be in it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
unless
I mean,
unless
well, I mean, this is going to be
unless a
yeah, this will
dev comes
become one of
out.
those things.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just gonna say this is gonna be one of those things where the dev pedigree. This will be one of the things that people will take into consideration about, how do they produce games and why scores were the way they were.
I think that's good because I was going to say like if whether or not the dev comes out straight ahead and says we're not going to be doing X, Y, and
Hmm.
Z, right? We will not be
Hmm.
using AI ever in this manner.
Yeah,
Then you could be probably fairly confident that you're safe, at least in terms of this
yeah,
particular issue for the game that you might be looking to add. But yeah,
Yeah, and I don't love the idea of having to predict based on like how a game looks. There's a lot of people that are like, "Oh, that
Yeah.
was for sure AI." I'm like, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe like sometimes you could tell when the person's missing like limbs and stuff, but other
Hmm.
times it's not so easy. So
Totally.
we will we will see. And there's also the question of like where games are coming from. That seems to be intersecting a little bit with the AI narrative as well. So anyway, I think it's just an interesting discussion, something that will influence kind of like where our recommendations are for games to pick up, because I think it's going to continue to have this bearing on the fantasy critic landscape too. So you know, we'll see what happens next. Other news, the big one, GTA 6 delayed again, this time to November 19th,
Yes.
2026. Dun dun dun.
So is this still now your number one pick in 2026
I
if you got the number one pick in the draft?
I don't know anymore.
I know.
I think people are going to have to stay tuned to hear us break that all down when we talk about our 2026 draft
Yeah.
preview show, because I really eh, I don't know. I'm a little stumped right now. I think I need to give it some thought. Like, I mean, November 19th is not a horrible date, but for a game that size, with the fact that it's moved out already a couple times, I I don't know. Maybe a safer bet that you think could get close to that score is like the better option, you
Yeah.
know? A different first pick coming to consoles,
Yeah.
specifically PlayStation.
Yeah. Saros, right?
We'll save it. We'll
Yeah.
save it.
Yeah.
Um, were you surprised, or
Yeah.
were
I
you
was
happy that they
surprised.
announced it before the draft?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I I don't know that. Yeah. I mean, I was probably not going to end up with it on my team because I probably never have the first pick overall in any draft that I've ever in. It feels like so. Um,
Yeah,
I probably wasn't going to end up with it, but yeah, I was surprised. I was not like it was supposed they, it was scheduled for this year for a long time, and
that's true.
that delay to May was pretty recent. Like it wasn't that
Hmm.
long; it was only a few months, and then so to push it back
Hmm.
again another 6 months after that, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Um, I would
Yeah,
be nervous. I would not want to use a. I'll say my thoughts. I would not be using my first pick um, to draft a game that's scheduled to release that late in the year and has already been delayed several times.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
just imagining myself in the draft, and like
yeah,
you do the shuffle, and you're like, oh, you're first. You know,
yeah.
I think there's gonna be a big pull to still take it. I think
I think a lot of people
the
still will.
odds.
I don't think I would.
Yeah,
I honestly don't think I'll think more on it,
yeah,
and we'll be talking more about 2026
yeah,
draft in a future episode. But at the
yeah,
moment, I don't think I would.
yeah. Hmm. We'll have to see how far it would have to drop for you to take
Yeah,
that. Still no word on Mina the Hollower.
yeah. It's kind of what
That's
we
interesting.
predicted last episode, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. I think it's time, everyone.
if
If you
you can
haven't done
still
it,
drop it and just drop it. This is not coming out this year.
please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other game that got delayed into 2026 was Mixtape, a
Yeah.
game that we are also very high on and excited for, but no date,
Yeah.
just into 2026.
Yeah.
And also notable just today, I think, or yesterday, Reanimal got dated for February 13th. This is I guess, the actual Little Nightmares 3 that we're waiting on.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, dated for February 13th. So that actually is an interesting one to me.
Mhm.
Early 2026 points up for grabs there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then uh kind of the big rumor, only one that I think is worth talking about right now, and we might see it at the Game Awards. Uh Lots of smoke around Half-Life 3. I know we talked about this earlier in the year. Have you seen some of this, Marcus?
So the only thing that I'm trying to even remember where I heard it, but maybe Joe and Kyle were talking about it on the trophy room that Jeff was insinuating
Hmm.
that he had a big announcement. People are speculating. He replied with an eye emoji or something, and people are speculating that this was in relation to Half Life 3. So that's
Interesting.
all about what I know. I don't know if that is where
Yeah,
you're. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I mean, that's part of it. There's some other speculation around like the Steam machine that was recently announced, also potentially launching alongside something like that,
Right.
which would help boost it. I don't know. I mean, it's been rumored for a long time. I think those people that love Half-Life have been clamoring for it for a long time and hoping that this is real. This one feels real, at least from people that I listen to. It sounds like it's closer to being realistic. So this could actually impact 2026 also.
We did our unannounced ranking the unannounced games
Hmm.
earlier this year, and this was one we talked about a fair amount, right? Even
Yeah,
at that time, there had
yeah,
been a fair amount of rumors about Half Life 3 kind of swirling
yeah.
around. So, yeah,
Sometimes when there's this much smoke,
yeah,
you know, there's actually a fire. So
yeah.
we'll keep an eye on that. I'm hoping that we won't record our 2026 predictions till after the Game Awards. So
Well, heck, if
we'll
this
have
is
to.
coming out in 2026, maybe that's the number one pick, John.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, let's see. Wait to see if there's a date.
yeah.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Well,
But
sure, of course, but yeah, like if we know if we get a reveal and it's scheduled to come out next year, that could rival GTA.
yeah, yeah.
With those caveats, put that in write that down in pen.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, let's keep it going.
Hype check.
All right. So, lots of game scores in November that I think probably will have determined a lot of leagues. I know it did for a couple of mine.
Yeah.
Um, Although I'll be truthful, I'm in second place in one league, and there's a chance I get knocked down to third. And I think Constance is actually the game I gotta wait to see here, Marcus.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, yeah. So we will see. But let's talk about the November game scores so far. Some of these actually were from October. We're starting with one that, because it's episodic, we just recently got the score for, and that's
Mm.
Dispatch, which landed very high at an 88, higher than I think I had thought it was going to land. Um, yeah,
Famously, I said
88.
this looks exactly like a high 70s game, and I'm not that interested in it. So, yeah, I was way off on this one. Congrats to these guys. Everybody I've heard talk about this seems to really like this game. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it took a long time to get a score. That's why we didn't talk about it last episodes, because I think a lot of people were waiting for all the episodes to be out. And yeah, congrats to them. I think there was, I know that they're in a bit of a quagmire when it comes to awards season, just because of the way
right.
the actual episodes rolled out. But critic wise, it's Telltale esque, I think, and it's being
I
well
think it
received.
sold really
So
well as well. So, yeah, congrats to them.
yeah, I can't wait to play it actually.
Hmm.
Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, a little lower than I. So it's dropped down a little bit. It's 83. I think it started at an 87, but not too bad.
Yep.
Not too bad for a bit of a sleeper pick that I think you had initially called out, and I had picked this up in one of my leagues, and not bad
Digital
for
Eclipse.
filling a slot.
They're the
Yeah,
devs. Yeah. So,
yeah,
pay attention to anything that Digital Eclipse is doing if they're
yeah.
eligible in your league.
I got to hear some interviews with some of the folks from there talk about the making of this game. Yeah, absolutely inspiring stuff. It's talking about nostalgia
Yeah.
and how Mortal Kombat and other some of these games actually influence our journey. The crazy game, crazy just to hear it. I can't wait to actually pick it up and not even play the games, just like watch the
Yeah.
documentary pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD remake, which we talked about,
Yes.
sat at an 85. Also, good pickup
Yes.
in Reco.
Dragon Quest One, like I mentioned very at the very beginning of this thing, is one of the first games, one of the first games I owned. And
Hmm,
so I'm keen. I have actually since replayed it. I picked up a
hmm.
NES. I don't know, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I played through, picked up Dragon Quest One, and anyways, yeah, I'm keen to get this at some point. I'll probably wait for a sale, but yeah,
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 very cool. Yeah, very good score. And then Arc Raiders, we talked about, sitting currently at an 87. Very
yeah,
good score for this multiplayer
definitely.
shooter game. Higher, I think, even that we had predicted. But you know what? I'm glad. Like we've been talking about Arc Raiders since probably June, if not May,
Hmm.
from the first time it was shown. So I'm kind of glad that we've been talking about it consistently for some time. I wish I had taken my own advice, but it's good that it's kind of landed up there, despite all the controversy. Shout out to Dan. This next game, Europa Universalis 5, scoring an 87. That
This
is great.
It's very and this
And
cemented the win in our shared league. Dan and I's league. Yes. So
wow, my
congrats to
condolences,
Dan
Marcus. But good
for
to Dan. Congrats, Dan.
yes. I'm so happy for you, Dan.
Iroh Warriors, Age of Imprisonment, as we talked about earlier, sitting at an 80 and kind of fluctuating around the high 70, low 80 mark. Next up, the game that tanked me, Lumina's Arise,
Yes.
scoring an 87, which you've been high on for some months now, Marcus, and you're correct.
Yes.
87, a great score for this, this game, this Tetris Effect-like game, although that doesn't do it justice from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you
Kind of
played it
right
yet?
where we thought it would be. I think you picked
Yeah.
88. I went a little over. Dan went under. I think he said 87 right on.
Yeah.
So again, he's
He may
right.
have been at
Yeah.
87. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, right around where we thought it would be, and congrats to all those who grabbed it, because it definitely helped you
Yeah.
out.
Next up, Winter Burrow at a 67. This is a little indie game, but I think we all kind of expected to do slightly better than this. I think I know a couple of people that had this, so I'm a little
It's very
surprised, but
cute game. So yeah,
yeah,
67 feels low, but have you heard anybody
I haven't
talk
tried
about
it yet.
this? No, I haven't played it yet.
I've seen our friend Seth Sturgill play it. Looked cool.
Yep.
But I haven't really heard too many people other than that talk about the game itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's just a low volume of. I think it's still fluctuating, so it's possible to bounce around a little bit still.
Yep.
Low number of reviews. Anno 117 Pax Romana. I saw this being picked up a bunch, so I wanted to mention it. Scored an 84. So there were a couple of people that had this, were bidding on this game for a little while, last few weeks.
This is one that I had singled out as from the Steam Next Fest from last episode.
Mm,
Yeah, it kind of, I guess it ended up working out for anybody who may have
yeah.
grabbed it. So that's good.
And this is one that we were all correct about, sort of. Call of Duty Black Ops 7, sitting currently at 67. So from our predictions last time around, we kind of were like progressively more negative on this game between you, Dan, and myself. I think I was the lowest score, predicting a 74, and I thought that was like, the bottom of the barrel. Didn't expect it to drop this far. I think there's some weird issues with like just different parts of the game. I think you have to you can't complete the campaign except unless you're online with it's just
Oh,
there's some
really?
weirdness here. Um, but we called it, I guess, sort of. Um, it was an
Yeah.
avoid call, so you
Yeah.
know, yeah, surprising.
Bit of a bummer
Next
for
up,
anybody who had it, for sure. But yeah, it just wasn't, it wasn't trending in a good direction. So I think
no,
yeah,
no, and I think a lot of people were expecting like a repeat of last year.
right.
So, yeah. Morsels, scoring a 67. This is another kind of indie game that I think people had been pretty high on earlier in the year. Surprised for it to come down a bit, dropping below the 70 mark is a bit surprising. And another one, Demon School, scoring 79.
Hmm.
This one, I don't know. I never really knew what to make of Demon School. I think it's probably slightly lower than we had pegged it, given all the hype around it. But
Yeah, I don't
I don't
remember
know.
what I
It's not a
said
horrible score.
last episode, but yeah, it's probably a little lower than people who had it were hoping for.
Yeah. And then the last one on our list here, Kirby Air Riders, scoring an 80
Yes.
for 2 hour directs, 1 hour directs on this game. Probably slightly lower than most people thought, and also maybe where Nintendo thought. Shout out to Sean, he know what he did. Uh, that's rough. That's a rough one.
We just needed to
Yeah, I
drop
don't know. I
a
haven't played the
couple
game
more
yet. It
points.
came out
Yeah.
today. Sorry,
I
sorry,
was just gonna
Marcus.
say we just needed to drop a couple of more points, and
Okay,
then I will overtake
that's cold.
Sean. Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, just a couple more points
All right.
in our carpool league. I'll in our league B at least. We're nowhere competing near the overall standings, but in league
Yeah,
B.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think Antix has it from Carpool. I don't know if anybody can catch him at this point. Maybe one other person. But it's interesting with Kirby. I haven't played it yet. I played the demo a little bit actually last week during
Yep.
one of the test runs. It was pretty cool. I didn't know what the hell's going on. I can see like people being confused a little bit. Um, I've always interested with some of these Nintendo games. Like there's like the review code period of time, which is like pre-release date, and then like there's always like the ones that come in, I
Mm,
guess, after the release date. If certain public like reviewers haven't received a code copy, I do wonder like what the narrative is starting, I guess, today, tomorrow, as we're recording this, as the game is starting to be actually picked up and played by the Gen Pop. Um, it could it could fluctuate a little bit, either up or down. I think a little bit more,
yeah. Yeah.
depending on how that goes. So we'll be
Hopefully
watching this
down.
one closely.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna pick it up. There was enough in the demo that got me like curious to like want to like go through it. So I'm gonna actually pick it up and see. Um, I still like Mario Kart better, but I there was a point where I thought maybe it would come to the same level as the Mario Kart score, but that I doubt at this point.
No, not now.
And then let's look ahead, although there's not much runway to look at here. We have a list here of some of the top fantasy critic bids from the last week or so. Um, I guess no surprise. We can go through some of these, at least the ones that are still to come. Constance topping the list with 96 bids, almost $1,000 spent. So let's take a minute to talk about this game. I think you're a little bit more familiar than I am with it. I think we may have talked it on a previous episode about Constance. It's
Mm.
been a bit of a darling, I guess, that people have been waiting on. Any thoughts on this game? How worried should I be about it causing me problems in my league?
I don't know all that much about it. It looks very cool. I've been aware of it for a while. I think it must have shown up in some. I don't know. I want to say it was like what is the conference that's in Germany in Cologne? Is it
Oh,
GDC?
Gamescom.
Gamescom.
Oh
Gamescom.
no,
Gamescom.
Gamescom.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. And I think they had some sort of an indie one, and it may not have been this year. It might have been last year. This is a
Mm,
gorgeous looking game. It's very very Hollow Knight coded, um, and so that's really so it was on my wish list, and I had popped it on my my Steam wish list for it's been a while. Like I want to say like 2 years. So I was aware of it for a while, and then we started hearing a little bit more about it. But beyond that, I don't actually haven't looked into the devs. I don't know
yeah.
much, like if they do have a bit of a track record, but it does look good. And from what people who have played it, the biggest, I guess, criticism that I've heard is that it's challenging. Like it's not just a
Mm,
walk in the park. Like this is like
mm,
Hollow Knight in that respect. So, um, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and I don't necessarily think that that's going to hinder the reviews. I mean, obviously, Silk Song, scored very well this year. So yeah, I think that this has the potential for doing quite well, but I could also see a game like this, kind of missing a little bit. So
yeah.
I think that it's probably a fairly safe bet for landing in the 80s, but I think probably by the time you're hearing this, you've missed the opportunity to grab it.
Right. Yeah.
So because I think it's scheduled to come out early next week. I want to say the 24th or something. Yeah, if you got it, good luck, I guess. And if
There's not much. There's not a lot. Yeah. The release date is November 24th. So yeah,
yeah,
they're not going to have a chance to pick it up after that.
yeah.
But it's just interesting that there's not that much left on this list that I would actually endorse.
So of
We'll
the
get through
list,
some of them.
yeah. How about I'm just going to quickly run down of
Yeah.
if
Go
you're
for it.
still looking for a game, I'm looking at kind of the list and the ones that jump out at me. If Cosmic Invasion happens to be available, that's your number one pick with a bullet.
For sure.
Um,
Hmm.
I think other ones that you might want to consider, Skate Story, we talked about that last episode. I think that's got a decent chance to do okay. Octopath Traveler 0 could be
That's the
okay.
other one. Yeah.
Um,
I think that one. I mean,
yeah,
I know it's not the same as 1 and 2, but I think you gotta
yeah,
you gotta find some safe points. That's a good one to turn to as well.
totally. And maybe this Unbeatable, although it was delayed.
I don't. Yeah.
And
What is this game? I don't know what this game is. I hear people talking about it.
so the tagline is something like, what is it? Like play music and do crimes or something like that. Like, so it's a
Mm,
rhythm
hmm.
based game in some sort of dystopia future where music is illegal, or I want to say something like that. It's got a cool art style. I don't know if this was showcased at one of the 6-1 Indie, or if I just remember 6-1 Indie folks talking about it. But I've known about it for a
Hmm.
little while, so this has been out there, kind of as maybe a more talked about indie, kind of an anticipated indie for a little while now. So I would definitely put that at the bottom of the list of the games that I've just told
Yeah.
you. But if you're really desperate, nothing else seems to be available, and you need some points, maybe you've held on to Mina the Hollower too long, and you can drop it. This will probably get you points at least, assuming it
Yeah.
comes out. Um,
Yeah, that's fair. There's 57 people that bid on it, right? And they put a significant amount of money on it, 675 fantasy critic dollars on it. So it's not nothing. It's not
yep,
nothing.
yep.
What about Terminator 2D No Fate?
It
Thoughts
got
on this
delayed
game?
again. I think this is
Yeah,
like the
I
third
know.
delay in this, in the last 3 months. So I don't know what that says.
Yeah.
I think I remarked on the last episode that the most recent delay was just so that they could um, line up the release of the digital and the physical copies. But I don't know if that was the same thing. I didn't hear any details about what this was released. I just saw it pop up in our Fantasy Critic that it was delayed again. I
Mm,
think at the Fantasy
yeah.
Critic site.
Yeah.
So yeah, not sure.
I don't know. I don't know. I tend to agree with your breakdown. Like, there's not much left out there. There's a few things here where you probably could pick up. Like, I'm going to assume at least one of those that we mentioned is probably available in your league. I know that it's available in some of mine. I have no more spots. So
Would
take a look.
you? How about this one? Here's a hypothetical, John. Maybe
Sure.
somebody's listening has this. We talked about Metroid Prime 4. We're just trying to think of games that are still coming
Oh
scheduled.
shit.
Would you
Yeah.
drop Prime 4 for Cosmic Invasion?
Oh, probably not. I don't think Cosmic Invasion is going to be like famous last words, but there's a lot of hype surrounding this game. People are very excited, but like, we really don't know. Like, I think that there's enough pedigree there, but there's also a lot of these kind of games that have come out over the last number of years, like that could start to color how people talk about these games. I don't think it's like a guarantee. I think early on, Metroid Prime 4 would have for sure had the higher ceiling.
Yep.
And maybe the safer floor. And now I'm not so sure. But I'm going to guess they're actually going to end up scoring maybe around the same place, Marcus, like an 85, 86 for both of them. So I
I
probably still would not make that move,
yeah. I think I'm
but that's
with
probably
you.
the wrong decision.
I think I'm with you. I probably would
Yeah,
just stick it out because I
it
think
just feels safer.
Prime 4, maybe the argument for keeping Prime 4 over Cosmic Invasion is that it has a higher ceiling.
Yeah,
Um
if things can cut the right way, that yeah, I just I don't know, but
yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know. It
that's a hard one
you
at
could
this point in
definitely see
time.
it
It's a
go
hard
the
one.
either way. Like you
Yeah.
could absolutely see Cosmic Invasion outscoring. It probably wouldn't be by a ton, but say a few
No,
points. And
no. I
you know,
actually think they could end up being around the same spot, more or less. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that'll brings us to Pixel Prognostications.
Pixel Prognostications.
Okay. So we don't have that many left. Start with Constance. Maybe I'll kick us off. For Constance, knowing very little, I'm going to say the score that I wanted to hit so that I can still hold on to second place.
Okay.
And that is 80.
Okay. I'm gonna go a little
Yeah.
higher than that. I'm gonna go a little higher than that. I'll
Okay.
say 82.
And then Marvel Cosmic Invasion, Marcus, why don't you do your thing and predict where that's going to land?
So I think this is gonna do pretty good. I feel like I'm gonna come in a little higher than you. I'm gonna say 86.
Oh, okay. No, that's kind of where I was.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
good. But that's a very good line. That's actually where I think it's going to land. I could see it dipping. I'll take the under. I'll go 85. So I'll take everything below you on that one because I do think like 86 or 87 is probably the right place, but 87 feels high. So I'm going to go with 85. And then Octopath Traveler 0. My guess here is that it's going to come in under the quote unquote mainline games,
Right.
um, which I think were both more or less like the 80-45 range, like in the mid
I
80s.
think so.
So I'll say 83.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little lower than that. I feel like it's going to be a
I think
little
so
lower than
too.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go 80 right on.
Oh, 80 on the dot.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then your lock for the year, Metroid Prime 4. You're
Yeah,
starting us
had you
off
asked
here.
me in January, I would have probably said 90 or 91 or 2 or something
One.
somewhere in that
Yeah,
day. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Um I definitely don't feel that now. I think I mentioned it when we actually finally got a date that I don't I don't know how to feel about the December release date. You know what it makes me feel like a little bit, John? Like when a government or when a sports
Hmm.
team drops a news press release on like 4 p.m. on a Friday. Like
Oh
they're
yeah,
trying to hide it a little bit.
famous. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what the release date for a supposedly big first party, Nintendo IP, it feels like a little bit to me. That
Well,
said,
remember that commercially it's not.
yeah,
So commercially, Metroid does not
right,
hit for
right,
Nintendo very often.
right.
So partially that's because they don't push it the same way they do other products, or another IP. Partially that's just maybe the audience, it's just not there. So they may just be also, but I think you're right. I think it wasn't supposed to be December and
Yeah.
things got moved around a little bit.
So, anyways, I don't know what all of this. I'm not sure what all of this means, but it doesn't make me feel as good as I did at the beginning of the year when I
Yeah,
said that this was my lock.
yeah. It's
So
trending down,
all
as they
this is
say. Yeah.
exactly all this is to say, I think it will score less than Marvel Cosmic Invasion, even though I may not
Oh,
drop it for it. I'm gonna say 85.
oh wow. Okay. I think probably 87 is probably where it's going to land.
Okay.
I think that's like the new reasonable score. If it comes below that, I think it'll be seen as, I think 85 is actually a pretty good pick as well. Like I could see it being in that range, but I think there's probably enough there. I've played it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it's smooth. It looks and feels great. I'm not sure how much of the noise we're hearing from the internet will actually penetrate, but we'll see. And then next up, Terminator 2D No Fate. I have no idea. I'm gonna say 79.
Okay. I'm going lower. I'm gonna say 75.
Is that just because of the delays? You're
Yeah.
concerned about what
Yep.
that means? Yeah,
Yep.
it could be the coolest thing ever. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
kind of excited to play this game, but yeah, this is one where the review score may actually impact whether I play it or not. I typically try not to
Mm,
let that be a thing unless it's like really high and it's,
yeah.
generating a lot of interest. But this one might actually be dependent on where it lands. Um, and then Skate Story.
Yeah, I feel like this one has a pretty big range. I don't know. I mean, this is a Devolver published game. Devolver tends to pick games that are pretty good, but they've also have some ones that score a little bit lower too. So I don't know. There does seem to be some hype around this game. I feel like probably low 80s is pretty safe. Let's go 83. Is that
All right,
what you're
I'll
gonna
take the
say?
over. I'm gonna say 80. I'm gonna say
Oh
84.
wow.
Yes, it was what I was gonna say, so I'll say
Okay.
84.
84. Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? That's probably going to be the last Pixel prognostications for the year. So I'm looking forward to our wrap up episode where we actually
Yes.
see,
Yeah.
where we all landed and where our guests landed and do a little bit of a breakdown. We'll try and have some stats that we put out there for everybody because it's been a fun exercise
It has
and
been fun.
very,
Yes.
very challenging, I think. But a reflection of probably where people are thinking and how people think about some of these games and where they're going to land. So, interesting, interesting exercises.
We got to do like our best picks, like the ones that we
Yeah.
got right on, but also our biggest whiffs, like biggest
Well, yeah,
misses.
the biggest misses,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, because there's been a lot that we've been like close. So,
Yeah.
we did have a question come in before we close out for the day. From Gout Trout on Blue Sky. Great name, Gout Trout. I love that. And he writes, I think it's a he. They write, "Hi guys, recently come across your podcast and thoroughly enjoy listening to you guys. My question relates to setting up some rule changes for next season, in particular the bidding process. Have either of you experienced both public and secret bidding, and which do you prefer? I've only used the secret bidding, but worry that if it's public bidding, the hot tips will be public knowledge, and keen to hear our thoughts." Thank you for that. I mean, I think we have talked about the rule set of public bidding and private bidding, but I don't know if we ever talked about our preference
Mm.
as explicit as this. So, Marcus, what you want to go first?
Sure. So I've played in probably one of my leagues right now this year. One of my 4 leagues does use public bidding. The other 3 use private. I've used the public bidding. I think Steve he had talked about introducing it a few years ago
Yeah.
now, right? And I think we tried it out the first year in probably it was the Trophy Room League. Um, I like both systems, to be honest. I think, like, all things being equal, if you have a really competitive league where most people are pretty active and people are keen to play, secret bidding, I think that would be my preference if you have a league like that. The unfortunate reality is that most leagues are not like that. You have some people, a few people who are really keen and active, and you have a lot of people who are less so. And I think, like, public bidding in that situation, I think is better. Yes, it makes it harder for those top people in the league, but it does allow for everybody to participate and be more engaged. And I think ultimately, even if it makes it a little harder for yourself, Gout Trout, and people like John and myself who tend to be quite active in our leagues, I think it makes for a better league and a more fun experience rather than just doing all these kind of like picks on the doing these sneaky pickups that nobody is ready for. And um, yeah, I think that public bidding kind of serves exactly the function that Steve wanted to, is to kind of level the playing field a little bit. And I think that makes for a better overall experience, even if it makes it a little harder for the people at the top.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that 100%. My personal preference is the secret bidding, but mostly because Marcus knows that I'm using it to try and get things over on all of my opponents. So, but I agree with Marcus's point. I think it really depends on the flavor and complexion of the composition of your league, and that will dictate kind of like what's going to be the best option, the most fun option for everybody involved. So you kind of have to. So you heard our preference. I think, I think we both like that ability to get things through, but that shouldn't necessarily be what's guiding maybe what you're choosing for next season. So have that conversation with everybody. See, make sure they understand the rule set, because it is kind of cool to be able to see where people are putting their bids on a weekly basis. I do think it like encourages people to even just log in and check what's going on a weekly basis. Like there's like an incentive to do so, even if you're not making a bid. You want to see what other people are bidding on. So yeah, yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a good one. And thank you for listening. It's always nice to hear from people that write in. That's always very cool. And as we close out the show, as we do every episode, please, we are on Blue Sky, both Marcus and I, and Hype Factor, and you can send us in questions there, comments, which we, as you've seen, we've incorporated into our episodes. Probably do a call out as we're going to do a couple wrap up episodes and then a look ahead 2026. So if there's specific questions you have about the draft coming up, start sending them in. We'll make a prompt and look forward to incorporating those into our December shows. So that'll do it for us. That was Hype Factor episode 14. Marcus, as I just mentioned, where can people find you? Where can they find you on the internet?
Well, the easiest way to find me is on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79. I also do now 2 other podcasts, John. The first one is
Yes.
Tiny Game Chronicles, which we brought up already on the show here, where me and my co-host Michael, we cover a tiny game, a game that takes about 5 hours or less to complete, every other week. So if that sounds interesting to you, we kind of do a deep dive discussion on that game. Sometimes the conversations are a little longer than the games that we play. So yeah, it's a good show, and I encourage you to check it out if that sounds interesting. And then we've recently launched a podcast with three other friends of ours. John, I know that you're good friends with all of my other co-hosts here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this show is called Brothers from Another Mothership, or BFAM for short. And really, it's just an excuse for us to get together once a month or maybe a little bit more often. We'll see, to talk about video games and probably argue a fair amount as well. So it's a kind of a fun show.
The
So
arguing is the best part. Yeah.
yeah.
Great freaking title. If you haven't listened, go listen. Brothers from Another Mothership. It's an amazing, I love that podcast title. And we were talking in this show about our gaming journeys and those that like have influenced us or inspired us. I could tell you all four of those people on that episode, including you, Marcus, have affected, inspired, and changed or shaped my gaming journeys. So I always look forward to hearing it and yelling at you all through my car radio. So
We end up having
'cause
there tends to be a lot of controversial opinions that end up coming up on that show. So
I'm here for it.
yeah.
I'm here for it. So yeah. And as for me, you can find me at John32 on Blue Sky. Yeah, and as mentioned, Hype Factors there also, both on Blue Sky and X. So send in those comments, questions, whatever you might have. Finally, if you've liked what you've heard from Marcus and I, please consider giving us a positive 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. It's always much appreciated. And until next time, everybody, get hyped.
Remember, the information provided is for entertainment purposes only. Hype Factor does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any advice or predictions offered. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are solely responsible for any decisions you make based on the information provided. We strongly encourage you to fantasy critic responsibly. And remember, this is just a game, and in no way impacts your status as a gamer. Hype Factor cannot be held responsible for any damages resulting from bad picks, drops, or overall Fs on your season.